Hello there. Welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week I'm going to discuss the documentary Timeless Heroes Indiana Jones and Harrison Ford. If you're a fan of the podcast and would like to consider pledging your support, there will be a link in the episode description for you to check out the various tiers offered. Also, please be sure to check out our TeePublic store to buy some Force Ghost Conversations merchandise. And without further ado, it's time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost Conversations. Welcome back to Forest Coast Conversations, everybody. This is another episode that I have been dying to get at because I love this documentary so much. You all know how much of a fan I am of Indiana Jones and of Harrison Ford, of course. And this is a documentary that combines both of them literally into one very well packaged together presentation about the career of both of these heroes and how interconnected and intertwined they are. So I can't wait to have this conversation with you all in this episode. And of course, this is the point in the show where we would have our Cloud City gossip conversation. But because I am pre-recording this episode due to my travel and other things that are going on currently in my professional and personal life, this episode has been pre-recorded. So again, there will not be any news in this portion of the show. But, D23 just happened last week, so I'm sure there was a whole ton of news announcements that have come out. And we'll cover them as best we can in the next couple of weeks here. I think next week we'll be back to a recorded of during the week kind of episode that we're usually used to here on Forest Coast Conversation. So thanks again for everybody for your patience here. And I hope you've enjoyed the conversations we've had over the last couple of weeks with both Craig, Matt, and then last week, of course, with the Obi-Wan Kenobi Jedi's Return documentary. And with that, let's just get right into the Indiana Jones conversation here, and we'll be right back on the other side of the break here with that discussion. Welcome back to Force Ghost Conversations, everybody. Like I was saying in the preamble, I am really excited to chat about this documentary. Generally here, we're a Star Wars podcast, but this is Indy time. This is the time of Indiana Jones. This is the time of Harrison Ford. At least in this episode here, we're going to chat about it. It's something that is near and dear to my heart. If you don't know my story about Indiana Jones, go back to our Raiders of the Lost Ark episode and then join us back at this moment, of course, here. And obviously, spoilers for the upcoming documentary that we're about to talk about, Timeless Heroes, Indiana Jones and Harrison Ford. But I love chatting about Indiana Jones. This is a character that's, again, near and dear to my heart. And Harrison Ford has just been one of those actors that has obviously been a part of my entire life here. But as I grow older and the more things that I watch and consume content, I'm just like, man, this guy is in everything that was a real big pivotal hit. And things that stuck to me very much so during my youth and my upbringing, right? Even things like The Fugitive and Air Force One, right? The things that are kind of like, The Fugitive, obviously it's a great story, and some of the Harrison Ford stuff is memed to a large degree, much so like Air Force One is obviously. But those 90s action films were some pivotal stories of my upbringing and childhood, which makes no sense, of course, because I think they were both rated R. So again, like, it made absolutely no sense why I was able to watch those and not Indiana Jones for quite some time of my life. But this is just a fantastic documentary. I'm glad that they finally have released something to this degree, because I don't think there's a whole lot of behind the scenes details about the making of Dial of Destiny that's in the 4K of it. At least I need to double check that. But I'm a big fan, as we know, of behind the scenes details. And this not only does a lot of behind the scenes details of Harrison, the person, and his approach to his work ethic and his projects that he takes on, which I think are pivotal, but also to Indiana Jones, which is also there are a lot of great behind the scenes documentaries for Raiders and Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And this continues in that tradition, but also you get more flair of the Harrison of this at all, and it's just really wonderful and really well packaged together with a lot of ancillary details from people like, obviously, Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark, and George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, talking about the etymology of um, choosing to pick Harrison as the actor for Indiana Jones, and just the story of how it came to be, right? The famous 1977 retreat to Hawaii, and on that Be Fateful beach there, we're deciding, oh, I would like to do a James Bond picture. I've been courting the Broccolis in order to do that, and then leading on to, oh, I got an idea about Hero of the B Republic serials and all that from the 30s, and kind of modernizing that a bit and repackaging that in the story of good and bad and truths and myths and all that, and then the rest is history. The rest is history. This and let me tell you what, this documentary is real. It is honest, and it is caring, and it is respectful. A lot of documentaries, especially when they focus on one person, can be too much in one way or the other. But I think it's really respectful and honest of Harrison. This guy is clearly a hard worker. His work ethic is almost unparalleled, especially for a person his age. I think that was like the big takeaway that I had from just the overall like the last 45 minutes or so when they're talking about Harrison in his later years, obviously, as the progression of the documentary goes. Also, apologies that I still have, when I'm pre-recording this, I still have some allergy things I'm dealing with. So I may cough here and there from time to time. Apologies on that one. You know, the guy, even at his age, and as we saw in Dial of Destiny, this character, Indiana Jones and Harrison Ford, are both up in there in age, and Harrison is still out there giving 110%. I love that he's still involved in the marketing of the movie, doing all the press and the talk shows and all that, going out to Celebration and D23s, and really just, again, being alongside and saying, I am this, I am that, I am Indiana Jones, right? And I am Iron Man, but this is my mic drop moment. I am Indiana Jones. There is no anyone else that is Indiana Jones. And it's hard to imagine someone else being Indiana Jones at that point. The physical toll that it's taking on him, but that he wants to do it. Like, this character deserves that. It deserves, and the story itself deserves it too, right? The concept. I love James Mangold talking about Dial of Destiny in this documentary, where he's like, it's about choices we made and the loss of time and realizing that we have few precious years left and the value of that time that we have remaining. What do we do with it? How do we choose to do our use our time with? Who do we choose to spend our time with? Those are all important questions. And the inclusion, again, of the ancillary characters, whether it be Helena Shaw as Phoebe Waller-Bridge, or Basil, of course, naturally, Marion Ravenwood, Karen Allen coming back for this story. All that comes into play here. But again, I gotta say, the physicality. Guy has a shirt off in this movie for a reason, not just to show his age here, but I think also to show how physically fit he still is, even at the time not recording this episode, but of filming that movie. He was like 79, 80. He had that airplane crash, I think, still that broke his leg or something like that, and had to recover from that. I know this film was in like development, purgatory for quite some time due to that, and whether Spielberg was a part of the project or not. Eventually landing on James Mangold as the director for Indy 5 after his success with Ford v Ferrari. So all that was wonderful, and I love seeing, again, the behind-the-scenes details for Dial of Destiny that we probably wouldn't have gotten in any other way if it wasn't for this. I love that this documentary also showcases Harrison at the beginning of his career, the stories that you usually don't get when Harrison. He's a private guy. This documentary made that very much well known. He has his home out in, I believe, Wyoming. I think around Jackson Hole, somewhere around there. It's like a regional airport that you have to get to. No one cares that it's really Harrison Ford. They keep to themselves. And then he flies to LA or wherever he needs to in order to be present where he must be for the time being for his work. All that goes to show you how the lengths that this guy will go in order to have his semblance of privacy. Love that he was struggling in school. Not that I love that he was struggling with school, but that's a great story to share there of how he wasn't necessarily, he learned his work ethic over time. Well, not to say that he learned his work ethic, I should say, but when you have a passion for the thing that you're doing. And sometimes you need to expose yourself to a lot of different things in order to find that passion, of course, and to unlock it. I believe that is a true universal feeling, is that everyone has a passion for something, and they have a passion for things. Uh, you just need to find what that thing is, and then you have that, you are able to exert a lot of energy in order to become the best that you are at that. Eventually, Harrison found that in trying to find something that could easily get his grade up, which he thought was drama, and he thought it was just reading and discussing plays. And little did he know that it was actually also a part of, oh, I need to actually star and act in them. And learning how to overcome his own fears and anxieties and to become the best actor that he could be at the time, at least, and choosing a flipping a coin, going to LA instead of New York, right? All really interesting behind the scenes details about a character's life, not a character, but a person's life, I should say, that lead us to this moment in time here, and set him off on the trajectory of his life. I love seeing those young Harrison Ford TV show contract footage pieces that they had sequenced in the documentary as well. I never actually understood that there was such a thing as a contract actor, but it makes total sense, right? You pay a guy to show up on set 5 days a week. He does his little bits in the shows that have needs for parts and all that stuff in the episodic television series of the time, like you go to the Paramount lot, for example, and then you head home. And that's the honest way to make a living. And obviously, his contract was up. He had to, also do some work on the side as a carpenter. We all know how he came into George Lucas's knowing based off of that, and then eventually American Graffiti, and worked with Francis Ford Coppola as well in his younger years. And then obviously leading to the role of Han Solo. Another thing that this documentary really adds to the indie lexicon that I think is awesome is the other choices, right, that could have been. I think we all know the Tom Selleck of it all, and then it showcased like maybe 3 or 4 other actors that could have been Indiana Jones. You see the Tom Selleck, and they were pretty set on him, Spielberg, and I guess Lucas too, to a degree, about him being the character of Indiana Jones. And I think, frankly, I'm glad that it didn't. History made it so that the right person came into being the right character in that moment. And obviously with the Magnum PI and the contract dispute of it all. But you watch that footage, and you're like, this just seems odd. I can't imagine anyone else being this character other than Harrison Ford. Could you, as the audience? I'm asking you directly here. Can you imagine anyone else being this character? I mean, fortunately, we've had almost 45 years now of this one guy playing this character, which I don't know many other characters reprising roles consistently for over 45 years in the same vein. So and like, wow, your just brain just starts going down these alternate reality paths, and you're like, I think I'm glad I'm in the right timeline here when it comes to this. Oftentimes we analyze history and like the what ifs and all that stuff, and we think, oh well, if only it went this way, maybe we could have went better, right? If I won that championship baseball game in 2004, what does my life do differently as a result of that? Who knows? I'm glad that right now we're in the timeline where Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones, and that makes me all the more happy that we were able to get all 5 sequels, 5 movies of this Indiana Jones franchise, and that hopefully it continues to keep growing with Harrison Ford as the face, the iconic face of Indiana Jones. Love seeing all the behind the scenes details, of course, getting the gang back together in a lot of ways in this documentary. Kate Capshaw as Willie, Ki Hei Kwan as Short Round, and seeing the wonderful video and getting them back together at D23 for the first time in since Temple of Doom. Just truly magnificent. I hope Key does wonderful work in the future with his next upcoming projects, of course, too. I'm always open to a short round conversation idea about if that is a story to be told in the Indiana Jones universe, if you will, if they want to expand in that way. I'm always happy for that. But just again, I think this documentary, first and foremost, or finally, I should say, Like if you were to take away one key point or message from this doc, it is that Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones. I think they're very clear about that. They're Kathleen Kennedy, everyone involved with this, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas. I mean, Spielberg directly is really like, if someone's if someone is Indiana Jones, it is Harrison Ford, and it is no one else. So keep that in the back of your mind as I kind of just ramble through some other thoughts here in this, right? Again, just one of those characters that you can't imagine anyone else being in that role and stepping in those shoes. Um, Now, I do like that with Star Wars and Indiana Jones, that it did offer him the opportunity to play a lot of different roles, which are very much so showcased within this documentary. Um, his work in things like Blade Runner, right? To see George Lucas talk about Blade Runner, a Ridley Scott classic, one of my favorite sci-fi films, which is also reimagined, not reimagined, but continued in such a wonderful way in Blade Runner 2047, that came out in 2017, which was a fantastic sequel to that, which also brought Harrison back in the same way that Star Wars did with Force Awakens, and now Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny also did. He's just replaying these famous characters of his former years, but still playing them to such a high degree and finding a story that also matches the necessity of having another story told and bringing this character back in some way is pivotal to me. So seeing him in Blade Runner, at least showcased in the documentary too. Another really great film, Witness, right, which I think he was nominated for an Academy Award for. I am originally from Central Pennsylvania. I'm from the Elizabethtown, Hershey area. So if you know that, you know that it is Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and I think most people probably, when you hear Lancaster County, it means Amish, right? So Witness is a film that's also always been kind of near and dear to my heart, especially because Harrison Ford being involved with that, and the inner workings of the Amish community within that story. Patriot Games is another great film, and the Clear and Present Danger, those early Jack Ryan films that Harrison Ford got to be a part of because of that. I've already mentioned The Fugitive and Air Force One, great movies in general too. Uh, We'll also throw in, how dare they not talk about his cameo, and maybe not cameo, but a larger part perhaps, Anchorman 2, which is maybe his most ludicrous and ridiculous role. Perhaps even Borat, not Borat, Bruno. My apologies there, 100%. I misspoke entirely there. His little quick, little maybe 10-second cameo in Bruno always stands out to me as something that is really pivotal there. And just always glad that Harrison is willing to take on a variety of different roles, and the things that were afforded to him because of his work as Indiana Jones, and because of Star Wars as well, afforded him these opportunities to take on a variety of different projects and work with directors, Peter Weir, Francis Ford Coppola, um, Ridley Scott, of course, not alone just Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, all these guys, that J.J. Abrams now too, Ryan Johnson, James Mangold, you add on the list, and this guy's still doing fantastic work even to this day, right? I think they have noted that Shrinking is a very popular show that Mrs. Forsco's Conversations really likes on Apple TV Plus, is really popular. 1923 is definitely a really popular one across the board on Paramount Plus that people are enjoying, which got its day in the sun here. So Harrison is by any means not done with acting, and although maybe his run and journey with Indiana Jones is done, uh, this guy just continues to have the strong work ethic and power of acting behind him. Something that I was thinking about while I was watching this documentary is something that I always think about a lot, which is like, what are the differences between Han Solo and Indiana Jones? Because on paper, they're these like roguish heroes that kind of do uh, do good in the end, and you root for them, and they kind of steal scenes and all that stuff, right? That's almost at the core of what these characters are at the end of the day. So the thing that I kind of arrived at while I was watching this documentary again was that Han Solo is a good guy, right? Kira says that. I think that's the exact character thesis of that individual, right? You're the good guy. Even though he's like, no, I'm not, and tries to play it off, and for a while there, you never know where he's going to land on his feet, but he always does, and he has this good heart within him that eventually he'll make the right decision and do it. Um, even though it kind of he's dragging his feet sometimes, or he's trying to portray himself as the cool guy. But at the end of the day, Han is reliable and he's going to be there. But Indy never has that. Uh, that's the difference there, is that Indy is never dragging his feet. Like, Indy has a sense and a purpose, and he's going to do it right. He knows that Nazis can't be trusted with stuff. He's going to keep them from doing things, right? Even Indy makes mistakes, right? He's not a perfect person himself, but at the end of the day, his purpose is clear, his vision is clear, and he's going to do what must be done in order to ensure that bad people don't have bad things, and then keep things in the hands of good people. But obviously, of course, like, it brings up discussions of like archaeology and the people that are in possession of items afterwards and how they were retrieved and all that stuff. And those are great conversations to have about 1930s archaeology and the idea of ownership of objects, which again I did my studies in history and public history and museum studies. So these are conversations that I've been having for the last 10 plus years now, which I'm glad that Indiana Jones keeps in the lexicon, because another great thing about this documentary that I saw was the legacy of all this stuff, right? What is the impact of Indiana Jones? Now, you hear me talking today, and a lot of that is because I'm a big fan of Indiana Jones now, once I finally got to watch these movies for the first time, and it became this ultimate love affair since then. Uh, but you see people that are like, I'm a professor, I'm a history teacher, like, I got into this because I was inspired by the not self-righteousness, but because of the passion and power that Indiana Jones had, and making this stuff palatable and enjoyable for me, and I want to do that to others. That is certainly an admirable way of looking at things here. There's also people that, like, I became an archaeologist and I'm a person of color, right? The Dr. Jones herself there, like, I'm now working to create diversity in this field that has long been very much a white industry, a white male industry too at that. And you know Indiana Jones keeps archaeology in the popular lexicon, and like that professor said, I had like maybe 5 or so students in my class, and then Last Crusade comes out, and now I have 100 students taking my lecture on archaeology afterwards because of that. And that's a direct impact of Indiana Jones. So I always love when things impact the real world. That's why we have these conversations here on Force Ghost Conversations. It's about taking these fun mythological stories and heroes in this sense, and seeing them play out various things in their stories, but also taking what we can from them and making us better people overall afterwards. And that's the clear direct impact of that. We enjoy ourselves, we enjoy the escapism while watching the films, but there's also great things to be taken away of passion, of friendship, of courage, of devotion to duty, and work ethic, and the strength to overcome others and overcome evil in the face of great adversity and all that stuff, and a little luck involved there too, which is, I think, appropriate to the Indiana Jonesness of it all. It's like there's always a sprinkle of luck when it comes to things. um, so all that was great, and I think this documentary does a great job again of pre-packaging of, like, the main thesis of it all. Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones, Indiana Jones is Harrison Ford. Don't expect to see another Indy film come out, at least in the near future, while all these people are still involved with these characters and properties in some way, and then expect there to be someone recast as the role, or rebooting it in a way. I think they're just gonna let it be, and the Great Circle is coming out very soon, which is a video game. There's a lot of different ways they can expand upon or not the aura, but uh, the universe of Indiana Jones that is set up here, and the way that it works through various other means, whether it be animated television, perhaps, maybe even younger prequel Indy if they want to continue some of that young Indiana Jones adventure story stuff, books, comics. There are other ways to do that, but again, at the end of the day, Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones, and Indiana Jones is Harrison Ford. That is like the most universal truth that you can ever get, and I love that this documentary makes that definitive statement, gavel down, pushed on. The hammer has been laid down, and that is the accepted truth here, and I'm glad that we live in this world that has that. So what did you all think about this documentary? Is there other behind the scenes details and pieces that you thought were awesome? What are the things that stood out to you? Do you have a favorite Harrison Ford movie aside from Indiana Jones or Star Wars? Perhaps you are a fan of Blade Runner just as much as I am, or what is it, Force 10 from Navarone, or maybe American Graffiti is your top dog pick there. It's Alfalfa in that movie. Another movie that's near and dear to my heart, American Graffiti, for many reasons, which I'm excited to one day get to on this podcast here. But yeah, let's have this conversation. What do you think about the concept of Indiana Jones being only one character? Does that limit the creativity? Does that enhance the creativity? Does it just make it more special, knowing that that is the approach that people are largely taking when it comes to this in this day and age of reboots and sequels and all that stuff? I don't know. That's a fascinating take and all that stuff, and I hope that we can have some great discussions online about that. So, of course, if you want to continue the conversation, we'll be available on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Hive. Just search for Force Coast Conversations and we'll be there in some capacity. And we'll be back next week with a brand new episode in your podcast feeds. And until then, folks, may the Force be with you. Take care.